What is going on, football fans? The New York Giants were back at it today on August 19th for their second training camp session since the win over the Bears. Now that they are 2-0 in the preseason, they look very strong in that game as they went on to win 32-13. They got back to practice today. Today was a very hot day in New York, and the players pushed through it, according to all reports, and the offensive line was incredibly strong. But before we get into all of that, I always like to go over the injury report, as you guys know, I believe that is the most important thing when it comes to training camp. You want to make sure that your guys are healthy, and the Giants, of course, have suffered a lot of injuries, specifically at the wide receiver position and in the secondary, mainly at that cornerback position. Golden Tate suffered a concussion against the Chicago Bears, and he was out today. Now, of course, Golden Tate's going to miss the first 4 games anyway, and you never want your guy to get a concussion, but I guess it's better to happen now than in season when he's actually going to play. George Osafo-Ajayi, the 7th-round pick, remains sidelined with that concussion that he suffered like 3 weeks ago. This guy's going to find it hard to crack this team. It's an unfortunate injury because I was really hoping for Big George to crack the roster. He still might. They are thin in the second unit of the offensive line, but really wanted to see this rookie get an opportunity, and he's kind of squandered it. Not that it's his fault, dealing with that concussion. Tay Davis was out today with an illness, which gave B.J. Goodson an opportunity, and we're going to get into that. He stood out today. Antonio Hamilton was out with a groin. Sam Beal remains sidelined with a hamstring injury. DeAndre Baker participated in individual drills, and Alec Ogletree was limited as he's still nursing that calf injury that he suffered in Week 1 against the New York Jets. Sterling Shephard was back to full capacity. I believe he was back yesterday. He's catching the ball with 2 hands, and Pat Shurmur says he is good to go for Week 1 of the regular season, something that we were all hoping for, especially with Golden Tate out with the suspension. We need Sterling Shephard out there against the Cowboys if we want any chance, and he's going to be good to go. So that's the injury news. Sterling Shephard, they said, looked pretty good. And here we go. We are going to jump right into some of the notes from today's training camp. B.J. Goodson, as I said earlier, really stood out today, and I think it might have been because he got an opportunity. He got to play with that first-team defense, being that Tay Davis was out, Alec Ogletree is limited, and they said he looked really strong. He actually came up with an interception off the arm of Daniel Jones that was batted up in the air by R.J. McIntosh, the defensive tackle that we all kind of forget about, being that the Giants are so strong there with B.J. Hill, Dalvin Tomlinson, but he was able to bat that ball up, and they were able to come up with the interception. Of course, Dexter Lawrence as well. Corey Ballentine, from what I read, from the notes that I read, this was his first not-so-good practice. He was playing with the first-team defense, being that DeAndre Baker is still limited. He was opposite Janoris Jenkins, and he was getting picked on all day by Cody Latimer, Benny Fowler. Janoris Jenkins did look pretty strong today. From what I read, he was beat 1 or 2 times guessing, but they said the footwork was very good, and he looked strong out there on the football field. I expect Janoris Jenkins to have a pretty strong season for the New York Giants, being that it is a contract year for him. I think he has something to prove if he wants to get another 2, 3, 4-year, multi-year contract coming off a mediocre season. I really think Janoris Jenkins is going to put in that work, and I expect him to be pretty strong for the Giants this year in the secondary. Eli Manning continues to do what he's done the entire training camp, and he builds off what he did in that Chicago Bears game. The Bears game, he goes out there, has a perfect drive, 4 for 4, 42 yards, and a score. And the first play was out of the play action. The play action rollout, that 20-yard pass was gorgeous. And the same thing today, he was able to hit on some short, some intermediate, and some deep throws off the play action. They said he looked great specifically out of the play action. Darius Slayton was back to practice today, and he had a nice day. Not so much in terms of making catches, but they said his route running looked very strong, was able to create separation, and didn't seem to have any lingering effects from that injury that has kept him out of training camp throughout the season. I hope we get a look at him Week 3 against the Cincinnati Bengals, because I think Slayton is the type of guy that could really be a deep threat for this football team. So good to see that he is out there and participating in drills. Another guy we wanted to touch on, the offensive line as a whole. Today, the offensive line, from everything I read, had arguably their best practice to date. They said in the heat, they really got it going against that defensive front, and the offensive line won the battle today. The first team, Hog Molly, set the tone during one-on-one battles between the O-line and the D-line. And yeah, they just had a great practice. They opened up a lot of holes for Saquon Barkley, and Barkley looked great today. Not that we're surprised. He had between 8 and 10 carries, but his standout play was a catch on a wheel route off the arm of Eli Manning about 30 yards down the field. He made a great catch, and they said had it been in the game, there's a good chance he would have taken it to the house. Cannot wait to see Barkley in the regular season. Jabril Peppers continued to guard Evan Ingram as he's done so throughout all of training camp. We've seen Jabril Peppers look good in those preseason games. He's known for that coverage, more so than Landon Collins, and he's looked good. Everything you read, every time he's matched up on Evan Ingram, he does a very good job, and he did so again today. So good stuff there from Jabril Peppers in coverage against Evan Ingram. That will be nice to see, a safety that can guard the tight ends this year, and hopefully Peppers could keep that up. But other than that, not a ton of notes outside of that. I wanted to touch on Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, they said, had an up-and-down practice, much like he's had in many of these practices this year. They didn't go over the stats so much with either quarterback. They said Eli Manning continued to look great, and Daniel Jones had some good and bad moments. But, of course, Daniel Jones in the games, which is what really matters in the preseason, has looked phenomenal. So nothing but positive things out of the quarterback position. Hopefully Eli Manning is ready to go week 3 against the Bengals so he can build some confidence going into week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to get a good extended look at that first-team offense this year. Also, Pat Shermer was asked whether or not Saquon Barkley will be playing week 3 against the Bengals in the preseason, and he gave no comment. My guess is he will probably remain sitting out, knowing that he could get upwards of close to 400 touches this year. Shermer's probably going to try to rest him as much as possible. But there you go. There's the notes from today's practice. As always, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.